Good morning. My name is Kirsty Dignam, and I'm here to look at the weekly energies with today's Monday's Musings on the 21st of July, 2025. I've just realised why I'm re-recording this. I was a month behind. I actually said the 21st of June. I'm pretty sure I said the 21st of June. Regardless of how certain I am of that, it felt like the previous recording, which thankfully was only a few moments long, was behind. It didn't feel as if it was in this present moment with me, with the information trying to come through, with the sharing that I'm offering. For those that follow me or watch these videos regularly, you will notice that my environment has changed. The truth of the matter is I'm still in the same place, which feels very poignant this week. However, the perspective that is being shown both to myself and to others is different. Not different, more obvious. Should we take time to feel in and really look at what moving ourselves in a situation can bring up? The reason I'm recording this is I'm recording it from my lounge instead of my workspace, which is about to become more of a workspace, more of what I enjoy doing. I've decided after much reflection to start offering services from my home, despite, or maybe because of being given many opportunities over this last month to feel into what I really want and where I want to work from. There has been an invitation to go further beyond the obvious and sense into not only my vision, but I guess what I want to leave behind. I guess what it is, everything is supported by my own beliefs. And one of those is that spirituality is not something outside of us. It is not something that we have to go to a separate place to do, be that a church or a specific sacred site. It is not something that is out of our everyday norm. It is a way of life. Whether you want to call that femininity, whether you want to call that religion, whether you want to call that tarot, and yes, I do mean tarot. I'm currently journeying with the tarot, which is something I do on a regular basis, and I'm on the moon card today. And one of the things that has been rising for me of late, with all this time to reflect, is not only my perception of the lack of sacredness in regards to spirituality, tarot reading, healing, intuition, but my own lack of realization with that, because I had been separating from it and looking at different areas to offer it and different ways of connecting to people through it that weren't authentic to me. And that feels really relevant for us all this week. So for me, one of my greatest visions, one of my greatest, I was going to say bugbear, but actually recognizing the difference this week between those things that we are not willing to negotiate on and how they're part of a deeper vision for us than even we may even realize. One of my greatest visions is that spirituality is an everyday way of life, the tarot included. It's not purely for prediction. That doesn't mean that it can't be used for that, obviously. And intention is really, really important. But for me, the tarot can be very healing. The tarot are doors to our subconscious. They are a meditative tool that connects us to what we already know within. All of these things are part of how I live my life. So it makes sense, regardless of the options being offered this week, for me to return to the knowing that I want to work from my home, that I work from my everyday life. And coming full circle with that, ironically, on the day that our shop was actually closed a year ago, where I didn't feel like working from home was enough, right? And this is what I'm getting at. The times that we have perhaps held ourselves back because we haven't felt enough, or held ourselves back because we believe we have to be a certain way, or using our past as a, I hear the word excuse, so I'm just going to share that as a reason, shall we say, for not doing things because it has hurt before, based on expectations, based on, again, how we believed things should be. And the opportunity this week to change that perspective. So whilst what I'm offering is the same, whilst it is simply just in another room, those that know me know that everything is a insight, a reflection of what is going on a level far greater than we can appreciate for the most part. So what's going on in this room? Well, this room is a room that speaks of my family. This room is a room that speaks of socializing and talking and healing and being together. This room, as you can see from the bookcase, is a room that speaks of knowledge and wisdom. Half of these books I haven't had time to read. So being aware of, what we are sharing and how much we're actually connecting to what we're sharing, being aware of our why underneath that this week. But it's also a place of warmth and of normality. And I think we can really get caught up in professionalism being a certain way, particularly if we are allowing the assumptions of what that means collectively to reflect on us. For me personally, professionalism is authenticity with who you are. And that may not always come across in the ideal environment. That may not always come across with a certain level of expertise behind you or certification, or your professionalism is who you are at your core. And this week, we're really being encouraged to feel into that in regards to not just our work, recognizing professionalism isn't just about our work, it's about who we are. And that will have an impact on our relationships, that will have an impact on our spirituality, on our home, on life. Because our professionalism is how we navigate life. Not where I was intending on going, but this is the thing. That's the other thing for me, spirituality, healing. One of the biggest things, one of the biggest foundations underneath it is acceptance of where we are. I'm really, really feeling into that. As you can see, that opens the doors for many things that hadn't even been anticipated, this video included, and the way that it is going. However, being aware this week of what we would like to achieve is quite important as well. We have a lot of planets going retrograde. Mercury, Neptune, Saturn, and I think Chiron by the end of the month as well. So these are big players. Now, that's not to say that we are ruled by our environment, but that is an offering, an invitation to feel into how our environment may be affecting us, not to work against it, but to work with it. So when we think of Neptune, it's our vision, right? It's our emotions. Obviously, it's far bigger than that, but on the surface level, when we think of Mercury, it's how we communicate with our vision. How connected are we to our goals? My alternative this month was to magically find some finances from somewhere, or trust that things would pay out in order to do what I do, or work from home, or not do it at all. Now, that alternative for me, which realistically where I am right now would have been the ultimate. Actually, I think there were more choices. I believe there were more choices than what there actually were. One, to start doing the work, or two, not to do the work. And there is that invitation this week to really fine tune, not to get too caught up in what we believe are different options, but to recognize what these options are bringing up, what they're reflecting back to us, but also underneath, what is the real choice here? The choice for me was whether or not I wanted to continue doing the work, to continue offering my services. And the alternative was to not do that. And we're going to face that this week. Are we willing to compromise in order to do what it is we want to do? How willing are we to reconnect to our goals? Now, that's not to say that the goals have even changed, but perhaps our perception of them, or ourself rather, within them. There's been a lot come up over the last year, particularly closing down the shop, in regards for myself with worth and whether or not what I offer is needed. And, that obviously is linked to a lot more deeper wounds throughout my life. And over the year, there has been a great opportunity for me to realize that, one, I'm already doing what I do because it's part of who I am. And two, the alternative to not do that would be at far greater cost to me. And that's the other option this week. Recognizing the choices that we are given are actually not about our job. Yes, they will be glimmered by that, not about our relationships. Yes, they will be highlighted by these things, but they are about how authentic we are to the life that we are living, how authentic we are to the life that we want to live, how willing we are to put in place whatever is necessary to ensure we continue to do that without the expectations of how that should be. And a dear relative contacted me today. Those that read the Daily Dose will already know about this, but a dear relative contacted me today who is due to deliver, and because of their circumstances, it's less than ideal. That doesn't mean they've thrown away their birth plan. That doesn't mean that they don't hold hope for the outcome that they want. But that also doesn't mean that they're not willing to take on board things that may happen and adapt as needed, because of the love they have for what it is they're creating. And that is what we're being offered this week. It's not about limitations, it's not about restrictions, it's not about worth, it's about recognizing how much we love what it is we want to create, and then what we're willing to do in order to do it, to get the bigger picture of it. So I can think, I'd like to work here, I'd like to do X, Y, and Z, and that is part of the picture. However, for all I know, the universe could want my neighbours to be able to gain access to me, which is easier living across the street. Recognizing there are parts of our vision that have yet to be manifested. And that's the other thing I want to share before I look into the energies this week. When we acknowledge there are things that we are unsure of, there are things that we cannot know the answers to without experiencing. It's one thing to predict, it's another thing to create. It's one thing to know what could happen, it's another thing to make those decisions based on that, but also to stay open for the things we have no control over. And that's the beauty of and difference of psychic energy and seer-like energy, and that is what we're all facing in the next decade or so, recognizing that our emotions can dictate our life, but they can also be worked with in order to create something different. The other thing that's coming up this week is to acknowledge that although things may be coming up from the past, particularly with the retrograde planets, it is up to us to see things as if they are new. Not as if they are new, but to see things embodied. So to see things from where they have happened, but also to be open to be shown something different. The deck that I've decided to work with today are the Tarot of the New Vision. And when I first opened them, Two of Cups on the top actually, and when I first opened them, there were 3 cards that were upside down. And it was all on top of the pack. So right in our face, what's rising right up, right in our face right now to be seen. The 3 of Swords was upside down, Justice was upside down, and the Queen of Cups was upside down. And at first it looked like the rest of the pack were reversed, but it was these 3 cards at the top. How we flow with any past pain. How we restore harmony to that situation within us and with those that it may have impacted and around us is what's actually going to really change the perspective this week. So whilst we may be facing things that appear as if they're being repeated or cyclic in nature, me going back out work-wise a year to the day after shutting the shop, yes, of course, that's going to bring up, why am I bothering? Well, that's what this week's all about. Why are we bothering? Remembering our why and how committed we are to that and how willing we are to reface, reconceive, re-deliver some goals that we may have lost sight of because of the battle that we've had in order to be ready to receive them, because of the trauma that we may have experienced in order to create them. It reminds me of the analogy of second-time mums or third-time mums or more. When someone comes in labour for the first time, there's that anticipation, there's that innocence, there's that, you've read up on everything, you're going to go with the flow, but, there's almost that restriction of doing things for the first time because of expectation. When a person in labour comes in for the second time or consecutive times, there's that knowing on their face of, oh shit, yes, I remember. But there's also that trust of they survived it, they got through it, that it was worth it, and the outcome that they did have. That may not always be the case. The outcome that we may have had previously may not have come with the responses that we wanted, the life that we wanted, the love and the joy that we wanted. But the invitation this week, it isn't about the outcome. It is about knowing ourselves through the process. Offering this healing could turn out to be nothing again. You know, it could, not nothing, but could turn out to not have the productivity, I guess, that I would wish. That doesn't mean I'm not going to do it. That doesn't mean I'm not going to give it a try. And that is the opportunity this week. There is no judgment there, but it's really about sifting through how we feel about our vision, how we feel about what it is we are here to share or be in service to and of. How willing we are to commit to that. And again, there isn't any judgment. This is about truth. This is about practicality. How open we can be with that. There are many traditions, many tribes that will see the past actually as our future. When we get out of the mindset of something being linear in time, they will see the past as our future and that very calling that is pushing us forward. So whatever comes up this week, particularly from the past, particularly on reflection, allowing it to be the momentum behind what it is we're trying to achieve in the future. Simply, I say simply, but simply by being in the present moment with whatever is occurring. We can be aware of the past, we can be aware of the future, but if we're not grounded here, acknowledging the impact that is happening to us as it's happening, it is potential, nothing more. So on that note, 17 minutes in, let's look into the energy this week and how to best navigate it. So I will obviously feel into what is going on. However, it's more about what resonates with you, if anything. What comes up for you? I suggest getting a pen and paper, definitely this week, for things, insights that may come forward. Taking a note of it. And making an action plan based on your responses now. Give yourself permission for that. To live now. Okay. Let's have a look. I don't feel like I want to shuffle the pack. I did shuffle them just now, and we have the Two of Cups at the bottom of the pack. And that feels right. That feels as if that's where we are collectively. It feels as if we are in this place of not just giving and receiving, not just union with our masculine and feminine. There's two dogs that have walked by in front of me, in front of the window. Not just going with the flow, but recognizing that part of that flow is our past as well, our future as well. I'm really feeling into how connected we are with that, from where we are connecting with that. So I'm going to keep it as it is. And yes, of course, when I do that, there is part of my mindset that's rising that I think, well, you know, if there needs to be something new, then I need to shuffle new. Trusting that what is new will come through. That's it. There's a great mantra. What is new will come through. Stopping where necessary. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Overall, well, hello, Lionsgate portal. I think, yes, all bar 2 cards either end. Every card this week is of the wand suit of the fire. So even though it may feel as if things are going backwards, it's got quite dark outside, even though it may, and that's feels quite poignant as well. Even though it may feel as if things are going backwards, it's an invitation to recreate that spark. It's an invitation to look at our drives, our desires, our ambitions. it has got dark outside, and I can see there is a storm almost preparing to brew, and we can be aware of that this week. In the collective, externally, in our own situations. I felt something this morning in the daily dose, and whilst I was aware of my own past with that, I could feel something coming as well. I didn't know what that was, and acknowledging that to feel something sometimes can just be enough to allow that energy to move through you without knowing all the answers. And yes, I do appreciate I'm a tarot reader, sat here with tarots in front of me, and speaking about not knowing all the answers, but recognizing that one, a lot of the things we see externally can be a reflection of ourselves. The tarot is no different, but also acknowledging the importance of what we feel. It's one thing to have an idea, but if we haven't got the ambition and drive behind it, that idea is only ever going to get so far. There's an old lady in front of me, in front of the window, walking with her dog, and the difference is she doesn't have her dog on the lead like the other two dogs were. Wisdom is something that we get as we experience things, as we age in whatever it is we are part of. Allowing time for that this week. We can often think that if we're not doing, if we're not creating, if we're not shifting or healing or fixing, then we're going to run out of time. And there's a real difference in creativity in regards to the initial spark, even in the tarot, the initial steps, the initial spark, and then that long-term fire or flame that will keep you going. And this week is a great opportunity to recognize what that is. So there may be times when things move forward really quickly and then slow down. And we may get tempted to believe that things haven't shifted or nothing's moved on, but it's allowing integration. It's allowing us to recognize, whilst infatuation with an idea or a person or a situation can be enough to ignite us, is that enough to keep us going? A lot of the opportunities I was given this month, oh my gosh, they were exciting. They were really exciting. And I could see where they could lead, and I could see all the things I would need to work through in order to make that possible. And it got to the point where everything I could quote unquote learn or grow from in that situation became the only vision. And I wouldn't say I forgot the fact that I wanted to offer myself in service, but keeping that balance this week, again, remembering the card that was upside down in the pack at the beginning of the pack was the Three of Swords. I'm just checking to see if my microphone's in, just checking to see if I've been heard. Biggest thing this week, if you take anything from this video, is to really feel into whether or not you've been heard from yourself first and foremost, whether or not you're being plugged, whether or not you're plugged into your own authentic voice and what is right for you, or whether or not your wounds and the past and your interpretation of it is leading the way. On the Monday, and it feels important to look at where we are, to be aware of what's going on, but also to keep bringing it back to where we are. On the Monday, we have the Eight of Wands, and the reason I picked, the sun's coming in. Sun's coming in now when we feel into where we actually are. On the Monday, we have the Eight of Wands, and when I first decided to pick these cards, it was because they are shown from a different perspective. So normally with the Eight of Wands, all you see are the Eight of Wands, and they're stacked up, and they're aligned, and they're moving really fast. It's very much about the energy of things being, well, aligned, and in order for that to happen, there being swiftness of action, and as a result, many things coming into play. On this deck, what you don't see on the other one is that behind that alignment, can you see that, is an angelic figure that actually has an arrow. Behind that alignment is our divine self and the focus of that. Behind any ideas that we have this week, particularly those that don't make sense, there, of course, my ego is like, are you really going to go back into doing X, Y, and Z? It didn't quote unquote work last time. However, behind that is this drive, this focus, that there's something there to be realized, to be regained, to be shared, not only by myself, but anyone that I encounter in what it is I offer. So recognizing, although things may not make sense this week, and particularly if we're coming from a place of not wanting to be hurt again or let down, or patterns repeating themselves, particularly in our own observations and limited perspective of that, what is behind it? There is a far greater vision behind many of the things that we create. Being open to that, being open to it's not even compromise the love that we have for what it is we are trying to deliver, and recognizing that means we will need to adapt along the way. Alignment isn't just ours, it's alignment of the whole vision. Okay, on the Tuesday we have the Queen of Wands. Only here you can't actually see the Queen. She's sat on the throne behind the situation, and her reflection is carved into stone. Her memory is carved into stone. In front of the picture, in front of the card, what you do see is the assumption that that could actually be the Queen as well, that she could be sat on the throne, that she could be carved into the pillar upon which she sits, but she can also be playing, interacting with those behind her. That she can be multifaceted, that the feminine herself can be all-encompassing, that it isn't about just how we look, that it isn't even about the legacy that we leave, those things that we carve into stone for people to see once we've gone or once we've moved on, that it isn't just about the fruits of our labour. She's got a basket of fruit here. That it isn't just about how we interact with others, but that it's about it all. In this card in particular, we're being encouraged to see beyond the obvious. I want to take the card away from the light, from the ring of light, so that you can truly see it, but it almost feels as if we have to bring it to the light in order to see it. Again, it's blurry. Recognizing where reflections externally are blurring the image that we have of ourselves, blurring the image that we have of our own authentic connection, of our own spirituality. Taking time to acknowledge that this week and nurture that. What's behind it all? How supported are we? Have we lost sight of the person that we have become or are becoming? Whose legacy are we living by, particularly on the Tuesday? On the Wednesday, we have the Knight of Wands. Now, normally you see the Knight of Wands charging forward, and it feels quite important to recognise what we normally see, to acknowledge the impact that that can have on our reactions, particularly on the Wednesday with the Knight of Wands. We can see something and believe that we need to charge in. However, if we take a different perspective, like this card, what's actually in front of the Knight of Wands is individuals walking a camel. Pyramids. Individuals taking their time, knowing that the journey is going to be long, making sure they have what they need in order to travel it. It's one thing to charge into a situation. You know, this Knight of Wands is on a horse. Incredible energy, particularly for next year. And we may feel that on the Wednesday, what is guiding us from next year starting to come through. But recognizing what we're facing is a journey. Ensuring that we have what we need to travel that. Eventually, yes, a lot of the places that I've been offered to work from could be really interesting experiences. Right now, I don't have the clientele to warrant that. And I can get very caught up in what success means, what I need to do to push myself to create, to do X, Y, and Z. And then I can get very caught up in, worth and things that I need to work on myself and blocks that I may have. Or I can just do what I love doing and allow that to unravel anyway, without the expectation or belief that it needs to be in a certain way or in a certain place. This week, it's not that we're not going to get the visions or achieve what it is we are trying to deliver, but acknowledging where we are at the stage of our labor. And in doing so, provide for ourselves what we need to get through the whole process. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. On the Thursday, we then have the Knave or Page of Wands here. Now, in this deck, and I really do hope you can see that. Yes, isn't that important? On the Thursday, acknowledging what is important. And when we do that, allowing that then to be seen. Taking a moment to first and foremost feel into why we do what we do, then allowing that to be reflected around us. Now, the reason I wanted this to be shared is the character here that has taken the light from the situation and is now walking away from it. It's one thing to stand in our authentic alignment. There will come a time, particularly on the Thursday, where we are encouraged to look at how we're going to move that forward. We are in the Hermit year, and there can be a lot of misrepresentation of this archetype about going within and being solitary. Yes, until we find the light. Yes, until we find our why and our action and our creative spark and what ignites us, but then we move forward with that. We experience that in how we share. We take those steps. We have an idea, but very much what are we going to do about that idea? Without letting the procrastination of perfectionism stop us from taking that forward, particularly on the Thursday. I love in this card the recognition of the staff, of the wand that the Knave is holding, being the very potential that will lead him on. Ideas are almost like a cosmic conception. They don't wait. They don't wait. They don't belong to us. Whether that's insights from spirit, whether that's prediction or a book or a piece of art or a workshop, they too have their own vision. They too have their things that they need to fulfill, which they do through us. But if we're not ready, again, there's no judgment there. There's no preference. Like any energy, they will pick a modality, a funnel, a hollow bone, a what I call glorified toilet tube, which is what we all are, to move through. A way to be seen, a way to keep moving. On the Friday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, yes, that can bring up feelings of rejection, feelings of defensiveness, feelings of never getting through any barriers that we find ourselves in, feelings of imprisonment or restriction, or I think this is just when we're going for the Lion's Gate, actually, that opportunity to really open ourselves up. It is post new moon, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. It is post new moon, using the new moon as a chance to pause, to reflect, but not to sit on our laurels. Otherwise, come the Friday, within 24 hours of that new moon, there is going to be energy that shows us all the times where we haven't believed in ourselves, shows us all the times where we have been defended, shows us all the time, showed us all the times where we have been limited, particularly in our own boundaries. Now, we can flip the narrative with that. We can use all the things that we have experienced throughout the week, throughout life. We can use all the things that we've experienced to acknowledge the path that we are more than capable of walking, particularly on the Friday. On the Saturday, we have the Three of Wands. Oh, what I want to show you in the Nine of Wands, what you don't normally see in the original pack, is that little creature there. It looks like a bear or something. It looks like a bear. So also acknowledging if we feel as if we have to defend ourselves, there may be good reason, but to really look at what that reason is. Yes, it may be a reflection of something that's going on outside, but it could quite as easily be a mirror of how we feel about the situation as well. An example, quite rightfully so, my husband often says to me, are you going to do this again? And he's right. He's 100% right. Thankfully, he knows I'm a stubborn mule, and thankfully there's support there. But he's reflecting what I feel. Now, yes, of course, I can take that on board and think, well, yeah, it probably won't work. Or I can really feel into what's going on for me. And that's the opportunity for us all on the Friday, not to feel into what's going on for me, but to feel into what's going on for you. What's being reflected? What makes you feel as if you need to be restrictive or defensive? What do you really need in that moment? On the Saturday, that brings more clarity with where we are. On the Saturday with the Three of Wands, that brings more clarity in what it is we need behind us in order to move forward. In this deck, in the original deck with the Three of Wands, what I love is you see one character looking out on the horizon. Yes, he has the world in his hands, but it's almost done in a very my vision of the world, what I'm leaving behind, you know, my legacy, my view, my expectation. It's very solitary, which again is that misconception with the Hermit year. In this card, what you see behind him, I don't know if you can, are a load of tents, a load of travelers, a load of people following, actually, a load of integration of a far greater movement than, I feel that in my chest, than this one individual. I know I'm not the only person, I know from people that I've met, the only person in this world that has believed they need to wait for the right circumstances in order to provide healing. I know I'm not the only person in my community alone that has doubted whether or not their home is a good enough place to provide what they provide. I know I'm not the only person that shares the vision of community, that shares the vision of spirituality being an everyday occurrence. I know that in doing this, I am becoming an reflective opportunity for people to look at where they may be able to do what they need to do in their own version of something very similar. And that's the thing on the Saturday. It's that we're really going to see the momentum of. On the Sunday, we have the Four of Pentacles, and I feel a bit stuck with the Four of Pentacles on the Sunday. It's almost like there's been all of this spiritual energy, this, even if it's been up and down, this backwards, forwards, this is what I'm going to do, hang on, let me feel into it, da da da. And then come the Sunday, we've gone from Wands to Pentacles. And it's almost like a standstill, like a physical standstill. Everything was really happening. I just realised Sunday is my birthday. Everything was really happening quite fast and shifting along. And then there's this physical standstill, like this mountain in front of us to surpass. However, pausing, taking stock, sitting with what rises on the Friday into the Sunday, actually. Because we can't see, there could be a doorway right in front of that person. We can't actually see from the perspective of our past. And that's the thing on the Sunday. We can get very stuck with where we are if we hold on to the past rather than allowing it to move us. If we try to move on from it rather than allowing it to shift us forward, we can become quite rigid, particularly on the Sunday. So really looking at the things that have gifted us abundance of life, of experience, but more importantly, how connected we are to ourselves as a result and the goals that we wish to take forward. Because overall, we have the Four of Cups. Overall, we see from behind what is really being offered here. Pegasus, the horse year, the ability next year to take flight with our own messages, with our own divine connection. It all depends on what we're going to focus on. It all depends on where we're at emotionally and how we see our emotions. Are they a gift? Are they a chance to reunite with that Two of Cups? Are they a chance to reunite our actions intuitively? Tarot included. Is it an opportunity to be told what to do about our future or what to expect? Or is it an invitation to explore how we feel about that and how we see ourselves as co-creators? This week, there are no major arcanas, energy-wise, in the collective. The planets themselves are taking a step back to observe, to watch, to witness. The cards that were at the beginning of the pack right in our face, the Three of Swords, Justice, and the Queen of Cups. How are we restoring balance and harmony with ourselves, with each other, with the world that we wish to create, with the visions that we want to move forward with? How connected are we to that? Or have we separated from that because of any experiences that may not have been the way that we wanted? Because of any heartache or pain that has been caused as a result? Can we flow and nurture with our emotions and allow them to restore any balance? Let's have one card. So we have literally 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 wand cards. Okay, there's 2 cards trying to pop out there. Right, okay, yeah, we'll go with that. We have 6 wand cards here. So the harmony comes from beauty. It comes from finding our why. It comes from reconnecting to the things that we love. We're talking Tippereth, right? It comes from our solar plexus. It comes from our soul union. It comes from the things we came here to experience. It comes from life. It comes from living. That's what forms our spirituality. Our spirituality is not a religion. It's our spirit being actualized in the everyday things. We then have 1 cup card and 1 pentacle card. So those new beginnings there, the balance. Oh, sorry, 2 cup cards. Don't forget. Don't forget the connection to our emotions this week. It's that's actually going to bring a union. The new beginnings physically are coming in our ability to see our past for the gift that it is rather than the restriction. But that means we must connect emotionally to what we're feeling, including boredom, including apathy, including where we may have become less than thrilled or excited by the situations we find ourselves in, and then looking honestly at whether or not we want to reignite that spark. That can be relationships, that can be our work, that can be life, that can be the world, and looking at what we're using to reignite that spark. Is it anger? Is it pain? Is it joy? Is it hope? And there's no judgment there. It's all energy at the end of the day. But the title that we give it is really going to be important this week because that is our own judgment on it. This week, feeling into allowing our emotions to be the gift that they are, to be what is going to help us move forward, to be what helps us ignite now our spirit. Things take work. You know, my husband and I have been together for 17 years. Has it been all roses? Of course not. We have, you know, troughs and peaks like everything else in life. And it's acknowledging where we are and making that commitment, making that. There's a big difference between commitment and compromise this week. Remembering that compromise is a co-promise. What have you agreed with your vision, with your whatever it is you're trying to deliver, with your future, with your soul, with your partner, with your work? What have you agreed? Does that still work for you? Are there areas that need adaptability, flexion? So 2 cup cards, that's where the union comes from with our emotions, and the new beginning comes physically then from how we see the past. The way that I was once shown time, and it's different for everybody, I'm not suggesting this is the way, but the way that I was once shown time was in an infinite structure with myself at the center, and the past, I'm just seeing another tarot card actually, 2 of Pentacles, and the past coming into the present and into the future and backwards and forwards. And how I saw something, how we see something based on where we are, really impacts the view we have of our past, which ultimately impacts the hope that we have for our future. Being aware of that this week, really grounding into the present moment, is what's going to shift with that Four of Pentacles, how we see what we're currently facing. Okay. Now, I did say one card overall, and I was very tempted to use the Six of Cups and the High Priestess, which is underneath. However, recognizing this week when you have addressed something, that there isn't always a need to go over things. There isn't always a need to, or at least recognizing why you may feel the need to go over things, particularly with the past. What is it you haven't claimed? See a lot of people on TikTok or Instagram, whatever, when I do a reading and they just put claiming, or I've claimed this. I'm not quite sure what that means, but really looking at what it is you perhaps haven't claimed or need to claim in regards to your past and where you find yourself and your future. When I say claim, what I mean is from a level of a soul retrieval. You know, we repeat things or go over things in cycles until we gather what it is we need to be complete and whole. It's not about learning. It's not about lessons and teaching, and it's not even about experience. It's about returning every moment to our whole state. Okay, so really feeling that in my throat. Communication is going to be key this week, but it starts from within. Wow, look at that. We're back to the Two of Cups. We're back to the Two of Cups. There are some things that we're going to come back to. There are some connections that are going to come back. Previous relationships, previous work situations, you know, like myself, previous beliefs around things, not necessarily so we can work or learn from them or let them go, but so that we can take them and ourselves to the next level. Next to that, we have the Seven of Swords, and underneath there's some real chaos on the left side, some real chaos on our intuitive side, actually, in how we see things. We have the Seven of Swords. We then have the Five of Swords trying to pop itself up, and we then have the Seven of Pentacles. And there's a lot going on to one side of us. There's a lot going on in regards to our intuition, because the mind has taken over. The mind has run ahead with what it wants to take forward. This week it is an opportunity to really come back, to look at how far we've grown, and the only way to do that is to acknowledge where our mind may have run ahead of us, where we may have mentally caused more endurance, particularly through lessons and teachings and things that we believe we need to heal or shift, and acknowledge underneath it all is about coming back into that united flow of completion and wholeness in every moment. What happens there is obviously our self-esteem increases because we're aligned. Remember that Eight of Wands. We're aligned to our own divine nature. That doesn't mean we know everything. It doesn't mean we're prepared for whatever comes, but it means that we are in that moment completely who we are and able to therefore face anything that we come up against, particularly by the end of the week. Have an incredible week. I shall see you next Monday. Take care.